This is the J. Scott Outdoors podcast on Western big game hunting and fishing, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more. Go to GoHunt.com/insider and use the J. Scott promo code when signing up to receive a $50 KUIU gift card. I'm your host, J. Scott, and I live and breathe hunting and fishing, spending half the year in the field experiencing God's creation. I hope you'll enjoy hearing about our adventures. Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we're going to have a really cool episode with Donald Trump Jr., and we're going to get to hear about his passion for the outdoors and hunting and fishing. Before we get to that, I'd like to make a couple of announcements. Don't forget that Montana elk and deer application deadline is due March 15th. And also March 23rd is the New Mexico elk, deer, sheep, ibex, pretty much all the big game species in New Mexico. And you can go on GoHunt.com/insider and check out all of their application strategies for the different states, and goes through the different odds of each unit and each animal. And so make sure you go on there and check out which units are the best and look at their breakdown and total analysis, the application strategy for both of those states. Also like to remind you that March 15th here in Phoenix, Arizona, Dar Colburn, my guiding partner Dar Colburn, and I are going to be doing a turkey hunting seminar at the Calvary Community Church for the Desert Christian Archers. That's Tuesday, March 15th, starting at 6 p.m. They're going to be giving away raffle prizes, door prizes. They're going to have refreshments there. And Dar and I are going to give a video presentation of how to hunt turkeys, and we're going to field a bunch of questions from the audience. So if you're a listener of the J. Scott Outdoors podcast, please make sure to look me up. I'd like to meet every one of you there, and just appreciate your support. They are asking us to, it is a free seminar, but please support the Calvary Community Church Manna Ministry Food and Toiletries Drive. Bring any non-perishable food items or toiletries, soap, toothpaste, deodorant, and that will be your admission in the door. So let's help support them. That starts at 6 o'clock, and we're going to have a great time out there. I also like to remind you that I am now booking Gould's turkey hunts in Sonora, Mexico for the 2017 season. 2016 is pretty well booked up, and I am taking deposits for 2017, and I only take a handful of people, so you can email me at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. Also, Dar and I have a few slots left for the 2016-17 coues deer season in Mexico, and we've got several different hunt dates in December and January to choose from. So you can also email me at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com if you need more information. And let's get right into the episode. I want to thank you guys, the listeners here at the J. Scott Outdoors podcast, for all your support. And I appreciate all the emails that I get every single day with all the positive comments and feedback and all the questions. And a bunch of these episodes are due to the topics on these episodes are due to emails that I get, people requesting our guests here on the podcast. So I want to thank our sponsors, GoHunt.com /insider. I want to thank Wilderness Athlete, Western Hunter, Utah Hydrographics, Phone Scope, and the Outdoorsmans for their support. Let's get right to this episode with Donald Trump Jr. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have a special episode with Don Trump Jr. Don is an avid hunter and fisherman, and I'm really looking forward to talking to him today about his passions for the outdoors. Don, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Jay. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sitting here in Scottsdale, Arizona today, and it's Oh, it's actually probably in the 80s, a beautiful day. Where have we found you today?
Well, I'm actually in my office in New York City right now, so it's not quite in the 80s, but it's unseasonably warm.
Yeah, absolutely. Don, I want to ask you some questions in regards to hunting and fishing. I love everything there is about hunting and fishing and all sorts of each. And I wanted to get down to where did you get your love for the outdoors and hunting and fishing? Where did it originate?
Well, it originated from my grandfather. My grandfather was an electrician, a blue-collar guy from what was then, communist Czechoslovakia, so late 70s, early 80s. And when he came over to visit us, he saw how lucky we were to live in, our family, how fortunate we were in many respects to have so much. But he also saw the pitfalls of that, and so he discussed with my father pretty extensively, making sure that I, saw the corollary to that. So from a really young age, I would spend 6 to 8 weeks every summer with him in again, communist Czechoslovakia, and it was, there's the woods, I'll see you at dark. And so I fell in love with the woods, being outdoorsy. Hunting over there was really very much an elitist sport, so it wasn't so much that, but it was, going through the woods, picking mushrooms, doing some little fishing. He taught me how to shoot an air gun, how to shoot a bow. Got me started, and I fell in love with it, and I read every book there was to read about it, and whenever I had an opportunity to, grab a mentor or someone who would, take me into the field or teach me something else I didn't know, I took it, and I wasn't afraid to ask and to learn, and it just evolved from there. And every weekend I'm either shooting, hunting, fishing, whatever it may be. We're always doing something. I don't think I've spent a weekend in New York City in 10 years, even though I live here during the week.
Yeah, I'm sure it's quite a contrast between what people call the greatest city in the world and all of what the city has to offer, and then being able to get out. And so as a child growing up, you felt like going away in the summers and being able to just pretty much live a completely different lifestyle. Was it the actual lifestyle that drew to you, or was it the calmness or the quiet of getting out in the woods?
Listen, I think it's probably all of the above, right? I mean, it is the lifestyle, and I very much live that lifestyle. Like I said, I mean, I've literally not spent a weekend in New York City in a decade. If I have a friend's wedding, I'll come in and go back out to the country. And so we make it a big part of our lifestyle, and I want to make sure that the great benefits of the outdoors and the time around a campfire and, everything in between, that those kind of things are there for my kids and they experience that. I don't want my kids to be, just city kids. If they want to do those things and they want to appreciate, that's great, but I want to make sure they see the other side. And it was such an important part of growing up for me, and probably being in a duck blind or in a tree stand or whatever it was at 4 a.m. made it a little bit harder for me to get into all sorts of other trouble the night before. And it was so good for me that if I can get a kid off a couch and away from video games and into the woods, I'm doing them a major service. So, I like to talk about the outdoors and what it's meant for me in my lifespan, because, again, it's kept me out of a lot of other trouble I would have gotten into.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to ask you some questions about fishing first. I love to fish. I've loved to fish ever since I was a little kid, and probably when I became a teenager is when I really, into my late teens, really enjoyed fly fishing. Mm-hmm. What kind of fishing do you enjoy most, and maybe what have you done the most, and what are all the types of fishing that you do?
Well, but with both fishing and hunting, I sort of do it all. I do a lot of fly fishing. I have a cabin on the East Branch of the Delaware River, which is probably some of the best fishing, certainly on the East Coast, if not the country. You don't have the fish quantities that you have out west, but the technical nature of it is incredible. So I love doing that. I'd say I'm the first graduate of the Wharton School of Finance to move to Colorado to be a bartender for almost 2 years. So I could fish when I was young and enjoy that, and fish and bow hunt and all of that. So I do a lot of fly fishing, but even in high school, I used to work on deep sea boats on the weekends to make a couple extra bucks, rigging baits and doing it all. So I'd like to think I'm a jack of all trades when it comes to it. I do have a certain affinity to fly fishing, but as I've gotten older and now that I have kids, and young kids, I've become much less of a fly snob, and sometimes it's more about, hey, let's get the kids out and let's just make sure we can catch something. I used to be of the mindset that, I would much rather catch one fish on a fly than 25 on conventional tackle, and I've probably evolved a little bit away from that now because, again, showing the kids a good time is, I think, paramount in getting them into it. So I go a little bit more for the instant gratification at times, but no, I still do a lot of fly fishing. I travel all over the country and really all over the world to fish and to hunt. And I love it all. I tie my own flies. Like I said, my weekend place is a cabin on the East Branch of the Delaware. So I love the lifestyle and I live it.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like what'd you say, the East Fork of the Delaware? So is that
the East Branch of the Delaware River up in the Catskills in New York, sort of the home of American fly fishing.
Absolutely.
And so some real famous waters. It's where Lee Wolf and Joan Wolf, where they started off their fishing schools and everything like that. So my property is something that Lee Wolf used to own. Where I live up there, it's just amazing place, and we like to get away up there. And there's a little pond, and I take the kids out there just fishing for bluegill and perch and stuff like that whenever I'm off the actual river, and we just have a great time.
And so I assume that the river that you're fishing, it's a trout fishery, but what I've heard about some of those trout fisheries is the trout can be very meticulous and very picky. So
correct.
I would assume because of the nature of those fish and how technical you have to be, I would assume you've been able to hone your skill on those fish.
Yeah, listen, when you can catch fish on those rivers, it makes going out west a real joy because you can have those days as my friends who are guides, and I have a clack of craft, and we float the river all every weekend. I'm up there, and my friends who are guides up there joke when talking to their clients about what their expectations to be is just basically expect to catch nothing. That way you will never be disappointed. It's not like going out west where if you get a 20 fish day, you're sort of saying, it was an average day. It wasn't really spectacular. It was slow. It's a lot different when you do get into fish. There's some really nice wild fish up there. They're very picky, very selective, and our entomological life cycle there. There's so many different insects often hatching simultaneously. And when you're talking about the aquatic life forms and what phase they're in the hatch, it's less of the sort of out west blanket hatch where there's really one thing going on and you're stymied by quantity of bugs. With us, there could be 5 hatches going on, and they're keying in on some random thing that you're not even seeing, and you got to figure that out. So it's a really technical fishery, but it's very gratifying when you figure it out.
Yeah, for sure. I've been in those situations where you're seeing all sorts of caddis, or you're seeing stoneflies, and there's fish rising, and you actually can't catch a fish, and you can't figure it out, and it's not until you realize that they're taking a size 18 blue-winged olive.
18. They're taking a size 24 trico, and you're seeing everything else going on. I mean, I've had that happen to me on more than one occasion, and it's great. But it's an incredible fishery, and it's my home water, so I love it. But like I said, I lived out west for a year and a half. I fished. I probably spent more than half a year living in the back of my truck fishing all of the major rivers out west, and I still love getting out there whenever I can. It's a real passion of mine, so I just love it all.
That's awesome. Is the fishery there, your fishery, is it primarily the wild fish? Are they brown trout or
a lot of brown. You do have some rainbows, a lot of brown, and then as you go further downriver, where you start getting out of the tailwater sections and the water gets a little bit warmer, it's actually a phenomenal smallmouth fishery if you want to do that. So you have some pretty good options, and during waterfowl season, it's always fun to do the cast and blast out of a drift boat, and we do it all.
That's awesome. What would you say the biggest hatch of the year is there on your river? Like, what is the monumental hatch that everybody shows up for?
I'd say it's the Hendrickson Hatch, sort of that, early May, mid-May sort of thing. I mean, that is an epic, if you want to talk about sort of an East Coast blanket hatch, you can get that there. The sulfurs, have a really good hatch, but it's a little bit, oftentimes more sporadic, a little bit. It's a much longer season. I can fish sulfurs, for most of the summer. That the green drakes, it's sort of maybe a week where it can be epic and you're fishing that sort of green drake coffin fly hatch at night. That is epic, but you just got to time it right. I mean, water conditions have to be perfect. Everything has to be good, or otherwise, it may happen, but it's going to happen on a Tuesday night, some random day, and by the time you get up there the following Friday, Saturday, it could be over. When you do time that, that's incredible, because there's nothing quite like throwing a size 8 dry fly, in the dark and just, basically fishing from sound. It's just a lot of fun. But I'd say the Hendrickson Hatch is pretty incredible, and when you time that right, it can be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. My home water there in Carbondale, Colorado. I spend the summers in Carbondale.
Oh yeah, I know all that. Like I said, I lived in Aspen, so I love it all. The Frying Pan, the Roaring Fork, all there, the Crystal River up there, just awesome fishery.
Yeah, so I mean the Green Drake Hatch kind of on the Roaring Fork and on the Frying Pan is kind of our big hatch that we look forward to. But we have incredible caddis hatches, and just it's a outstanding fishery, and we float from just below Aspen there, from Woody Creek Bridge all the way down to the confluence of the Colorado, and
I know
even on down. It's great water, isn't it?
I know those waters well, and there's nothing like when you time that Green Drake hatch when it's going simultaneously with the PMDs, and you're just fishing a double rig with both of them, and it's just awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, it is. So you obviously like dry fly fishing.
No, not a snob at all. I love getting. I fish where the fish are. I would rather catch fish than do it in a purist sort of sense. So, I do love that hatch, but I spend a lot of time. I spend probably 90% of my time nymphing. If they're not visible on the surface, I don't spend a lot of time searching with dry flies. I would much rather. I have no issue fishing a nymph rig, either conventional indicator rig. I spend a lot of time Euro nymphing, pocket water, certainly in the summer. Spent quite a bit. I wrote the forward to George Daniels' new book on streamer fishing. He's just, probably the best fly fisherman I know. I fish whatever method I think I'm going to catch the most fish on. So, whether it's wet flies, whether it's, ripping streamers in high water, whether it's, dries or nymphing, whatever's working, I'm fishing.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I'm a bit of a streamer junkie myself. I love fishing dries, but there's just something about, I love nymphing too, but something about streamers in the right conditions.
Oh yeah.
Big fish chasing streamers and yanking the streamer right out of their mouth, and it's a technique all on its own to be able to fish streamers.
100%.
Well, that's cool.
And there's a lot there. I mean, there's it's not just ripping them from a drift boat. It's fishing them in a lot of unconventional ways. And I learned a lot from George that way, and he's phenomenal author, incredible fisherman. And so his book that I had the pleasure of writing the forward to is just awesome as it relates to that, and just opens up a whole new mindset as it relates to streamer fishing as well. So it's great. Absolutely.
Have you done much saltwater fly fishing?
Oh yeah. I grew up in the Long Island Sound in Connecticut on the weekend, so I had a Boston whaler, and I mean I was saltwater fly fishing in the early 90s before it was really a big deal. So I've caught everything from bonefish, stripers, tarpon, sailfish, marlin, tuna, all on a fly rod. So even bluefin. I've done it all with a fly rod, because there was a time in my life where I was sort of a fly purist, and I would go out there and I would just try to figure out how to do everything on a fly. I've probably evolved away from that, other than trout fishing, where I still do, all of my stuffed trout is with a fly. But I do it all. If I bring a fly rod, if the opportunity presents itself, awesome. If it doesn't, I'm just as comfortable with bait casting gear, or fishing surface plugs, whatever it takes to have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear that striper bite up there can be unbelievable if you hit it right.
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, last summer I finally caught Walter. That fish I've been chasing for my entire childhood. I caught a 50-pound striper on an 8-pound braid with a topwater plug. I was fishing off of Martha's Vineyard with a guide that's just an awesome guide, a good friend of mine, Joe LeClaire. And we were up there, and I put the fly gear away because it was gale force winds and it was just blowing, and I was like, what, I'm just getting beat up. There's not worth it. Took the popper rod and just cast my second cast just 2 feet off the shore in this gale. You just saw this explosion. I knew right away it was a massive fish, and like the smart ones do, he started wrapping me around sort of the I'm not going to call them coral heads because it's up north, but the big rock heads off the beach. I just threw my phone to my friend, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm not letting that fish go." So I jumped in because I felt the line rubbing. So I jumped in and swam to sort of unwind him from the rock so he wouldn't break me off, and I just landed him in open water. I saw that plug with all the hooks in there, and I saw this big fish. I'm like, well, I'm just going to stick my hand in his mouth and hope that I don't get hooked to the plug with him on the other end pulling. But, we got him on. We had a certified scale on the boat, went 50 pounds, and a few ounces would have been a line class world record, but that was a big mama fish. I wanted to let her go to make sure that she makes some more baby fish. So even though I broke the record by about 8 pounds and we knew it, we opted to let her go and make some more baby big bass.
That's awesome. That's a great story. Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors.
At GoHunt.com, we are restoring the heritage of the old and constantly redefining the new. We stay focused and put our efforts into redefining the future of Western hunting. What makes us special? What makes us different? We are the new breed of hunter. We are the customers that we serve. We are the innovators, and we are the future. Visit GoHunt.com/insider and join the movement.
Use the J. Scott promo code when signing up and receive a $50 KUIU gift card. Since 1982, the Outdoorsman's in Phoenix has made it their goal to provide the very best customer service combined with the latest and greatest optics and accessories in the business. Outdoorsman's is the leading designer and manufacturer of high-quality tripods and mounting accessories for any hunter's optical needs. Go to outdoorsmans.com or call 1-800-291-8065 and use the J. Scott promo code until February 28th to receive 10% off all Outdoorsman's packs and pack accessories.
Don, that's a great story. Congratulations on catching a fish of that size.
Well,
I want
thank you.
to talk to you about some of your hunting. And would you say you fish or hunt more or do both equal?
It's interesting. I mean, I hunt a lot too, and I'm a competitive shooter as well, and I reload, and probably between my brother and I, we reload for about 150 different calibers. So we're pretty serious about all of it. So I do a lot. I mean, in the summer, I fish more, and in the fall, I hunt a lot more. And then my vacation time isn't really spent going to a beach and sitting there doing nothing. I take my vacation times going out to the Yukon doing a sheep hunt, or going somewhere God knows where, living. I sort of like the extreme hunting stuff, and so that's how I spend my vacation time. So, I think fishing season's a little longer than hunting season, but during our early bow season, which usually starts around October 1st, I'm in a tree stand, or a ground blind every weekend, usually at least both days, sometimes morning and afternoon, both days. If I can get away from the kids, it's been a little bit harder because I have 5, kids, and I try to get them out as much as possible. But, sometimes I'll pass on the morning hunt or the afternoon hunt to do some family stuff, or even, take them out to the 3D range and let them shoot some archery and let them, fish. So, I do a lot of it, and I do well, but I can honestly say I can't recall a weekend where I haven't either hunted, fished, or shot pretty extensively in as long as I can remember.
That's fantastic. And your whitetail rut is what, the first 2 weeks of November there?
Yeah, it varies a lot, and especially with the weird weather conditions we've had. I mean, I this year we basically didn't even have a rut, as that I could tell. And I spend enough time in the woods. I'll spend enough even mornings in the middle of the week where I'll run up and say, okay, well, I can get 2 hours in the blind before work, so I'll do it. And this year, it just never got cold till really late. So, I don't think I missed a span of more than 4 or 5 days where I wasn't in the woods, and I didn't see the usual chasing or the usual pre-rut stuff that's so heavy. Didn't see much or hear much grunting in the deer that I did. So I still did fine, just because I sort of figured out, the good choke points and the places where I can hunt to get, some natural funnels to get them to come by. And again, up here, we're lucky if we see a 125, 130 class whitetail, so I do a lot of traditional archery tackle hunting just to make it much more challenging for myself, because there's no shortage of deer, but we just don't have great deer. And so, I'm still pretty lucky just because I've got it figured out in the places that I do get to hunt, but there wasn't the pronounced rut that we would normally have. It was really odd.
Yeah,
but that would normally be good timing, and even a little bit later. Sometimes it goes almost into that third week where you're starting to push into sort of our shotgun season. here. Oftentimes you can still see a lot of that activity. But yeah, I mean, that second week would sort of normally be a pretty good call. It's just non-existent this year.
Are you kind of like me in that you'll hunt archery, you'll hunt rifle, you'll hunt whatever it calls for, whatever the season dictates?
Oh, 100%. I mean, if there's a season that's on, I do it. I mean, archery, early season, I hunt a lot of traditional gear, longbows, recurves, that kind of stuff. As it starts getting colder, which wasn't as much of an issue this year, but as it starts to get colder and I have to sort of bulk up a little bit more because I'm going to be in a tree stand for 3.5 hours, it gets a little harder for me to shoot that kind of tackle. I just don't shoot it as well when I'm cold and when I'm bulky in terms of clothing. So I'll switch over to the wheels, switch over to my Hoyt and start shooting that compound wise. And then we don't have a rifle season per se where I am, other than if I go upstate, real far. But we have a couple other places my brother and I have where we shotgun season. So I'll either hunt shotgun, I'll hunt handguns, I'll hunt revolvers, I'll hunt muzzleloader. I do it all.
That's fantastic. And would you say if you had to, I get people asking me this question all the time. If you had to choose one,
Oof.
what would you say is your favorite?
In terms of methodology, or type of hunting? Listen, methodology. I mean, I guess it depends, because if I could only do one thing ever, it would probably be bow hunting, simply because it's a much longer season, right? I mean, our rifle season's maybe 10 days, 2 weeks at best. Or the shotgun season, so it's a much shorter season, so I would much rather have an extended season. Now, that said, if I'm going to take my 2-week vacation, I'm going to go to the Yukon to do a sheep hunt, I'm still at the stage of my life where, if I don't get into that 30, 40, 50 yard kind of range and, being a competitive long range shooter, I know I'm capable of shooting at some pretty good distances. I'm not at the point where I'm saying, okay, well, I would rather not get anything than not get it with a bow. I'm not there yet. So, it depends, but I do in my home areas where I know the deer, I know what's going on. I'm out there scouting, have my trail cameras up. My season is sort of year round. I mean, I'm always watching and figuring it out. So I have it down that I do probably prefer the bow stuff, or again, I'll hunt revolvers a lot and just try to make it real challenging, make it a proximity game, make it about getting in close and not just pulling the trigger. It's much more hunting than just shooting. But again, if I go down to Texas or out west or whatever, and I'm only going to get to do that once or twice this season, I'll bring some different kind of firepower down there.
Yeah, for sure. For me, hunting, obviously providing food for my family, but I love all of the, strategy and tactical stuff and trying to figure the animal out and trying to figure out the best place to be. And, I think that to me, preparing for the hunts, are you the same type of?
100%. I mean, half the fun for me on the hunting is the pre-hunt. I mean, I'm not one of these guys that just shows up and does guided hunts and stuff. Now, if I go to the Yukon, of course that's a little different. But at home and in around here, it's all do it yourself. And I have as much fun. It's so much still part of the lifestyle and part of the culture is setting up blinds, cutting shooting lanes, and doing that kind of stuff during the summer prior to the season. I mean, that makes the season so much more satisfying to me when you figure it out, when you get it right, when you remember to clear that one extra tree that gave you the actual shot that allowed you to take the deer that year that you didn't get, and practicing with the trad gear and spending time on a 3D range and shooting for hours, especially with the traditional gear where it really is an art form that takes a long time to perfect. To me, it's all part of it, just like tying my own flies to catch the fish on, and it's just that much more satisfying. So, again, I'm always doing something and, reloading, tweaking my loads to, I'm coming at it usually from a competitive mindset to really get it better. But it also means that, when I'm in the field and I'm shooting well and I'm shooting competitively, I know that I'll be able to make that shot in the field that, is fair, and just to the animal that I'm chasing after. So, to me, it's all encompassing. There's no such thing as a season. It's all one big season. It's called the year, and it's just what you're doing, even if I'm not necessarily in the field pursuing actual game.
Yeah, people ask me in mixed company with my wife, they'll say, what's your favorite animal or what's your favorite season to hunt? And my wife just laughs because she's, her answer is, whatever season it is, that's what he's into at the time. And the nice thing about hunting for me and even fishing is there's always something new and there's always a new season and everything's always changing. And, just about the time you get tired of, say, turkey hunting for 30 days or whatever, that all of a sudden it's fishing season and you can just move from season to season. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about the sporting lifestyle.
I don't know if you've heard me say it before, but you basically took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, that's exactly right. It's, about the time I'm getting bored with, the only problem is that lull that right now, basically, the February and March, where it's like, at least where I live, there's nothing in season. There's not a lot of this. Like, I spend a lot of time, I guess, shooting clays and getting my bows ready for turkey season coming up for us. It's a little bit later than most places. We're in May. So, hopefully I'll get down south. Right now with the campaign and everything, it's a little bit tougher to get away. But, the turkeys are calling, and I got to get ready for that one now.
Absolutely. So is your brother Eric every bit as much into it as you are?
Yeah, no, he's very into it as well. I probably spend a little bit more time traveling for it and doing sort of those destination trips, but he's a fanatic as well. He's a phenomenal shooter, incredible clay shooter, very gifted that way. So we shoot most weekends together and just have a great time. So yeah, no, we're both fanatics. We're the guys that you took our gun collections and people started looking at them from the outside, start wondering what's going on here. So, we're the guys that when they pull over those people and they try to say, oh, they had 5,000 rounds of ammo in his car because he has a couple bricks of 22. We're like, what are you talking about? Like we would never not have a couple thousand rounds of ammo in the back of our car. It's almost like unheard of. What do you mean? We're the case study for that, I guess.
Just a way of life, isn't it?
It is. And like I said, for me, it's 100% a lifestyle, and I live it fully, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
I understand you went on a sheep hunt recently. Tell me about your gear prep and kind of how you got in shape and ready for that hunt.
Well, in terms of getting in shape, I'm one of those CrossFit guys. I do it because it pushes me harder than anything else, but I basically do it so I'm the guy in camp. If I'm going with someone like that and I'm going that far and going that far out of the way, I want my guide to be like, damn, I can't keep up with you. So that's when I know I've done my job, when the guy's like, calls you a mountain goat. So I work out hard, and it's usually so that I can perform in the field. But, gear prep, I guess there's a lot of stuff as it relates to shooting and load development. I'm not abject to shooting far, but it's only because I shoot competitively. I shoot competitive long range, I shoot competitive high power. I've got 600-yard range in my backyard on the weekends so that I can practice. And it's not about trying to. I am a bow hunter at heart, so I like to get in close. But I want to know that if I have to shoot out at distance, that it's not a question of what's going to happen. It's just doing it. So there's a lot of shooting involved with it. I shoot thousands of centerfire rounds a year. Shoot thousands of shotgun rounds. I shoot more 22 than you can even imagine. Just for finesse and for practice and with the kids. Gear-wise, huge fan of the KUIU stuff. It's light, it's warm, it's incredibly functional. Jason Hairstron's become a good friend of mine. He's done an amazing job building up that business, and it's just a phenomenal gear. He's a great guy. He's been really, he was very helpful to me even before we became friendly. He just has an incredible all-round product for anything you'd want. For that kind of hunting. And, again, if I'm going to take my vacation, which I'd like to believe is pretty hard-earned, and that's going to be my only vacation that year other than maybe a couple of long weekend trips with the kids, and I'm going to do it, I want good gear, and he makes the best as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. So have you completed your Grand Slam of sheep yet, or are you still working on that?
Still working on it. I have a really nice doll. I have a world-class desert, 187 and 5/8. So
goodness,
yeah,
wow,
a really solid desert. Funny story. Also, I basically got it by dumb luck. Not because of the hunt. We worked hard for it, but I was literally invited by some friends of mine I met on a business trip. I was on a business trip looking at a resort development type of deal in Mexico, and we were at this dinner, business dinner, talking golf, and somehow hunting came up, and they saw my eyes perk up, and they were like, wait a minute, you're a hunter? And all of a sudden I found that they're hunters, and they had a huge ranch in Sonora, and became good buddies with the guys. They're like, well, what are you doing this weekend? I was like, I don't know, it was November. I'm going to go sit in a tree stand in New York. But the prospect of chasing a big mule deer in Sonora was a lot cooler than was a lot cooler than small whitetail in New York. So went out with these guys now without any gear, borrowed a bow. Borrowed my friend's dad's bow, fit me perfectly. His 20-yard pin was basically 25 yards from me the way I was shooting it. Went out, and in one weekend I shot a 217 mule deer by Dunlock, man. Just, I was seeing, just sitting over a food plot, I was seeing deer that were, by my standards, huge, 160s, 170s, 180s. I just waited a little bit longer, even though I didn't have much time, and, saw this mule deer come on. I just saw that shoulder, and I was like, oh my God, it's just a massive, massive mule deer. So a 217 mule deer with a bow, and I just became with these guys. So the following year, they're like, "Hey, you want to come back down?" I was like, "Yeah, I do. I do. Chase some coues, And about 2 weeks before the hunt, they call me and they say, "Hey, what's your address?" I was like, "Here, why?" Well, we need it for the CITES permit. I was like, well, I've hunted mule deer now in Mexico and coues, and I've never needed a CITES permit. Like, what for? They're like, they gave us a sheep tag on our place. It's yours if you want it. So 2 weeks later, I'm chasing desert sheep in Sonora as just a gift from my friends to say, hey, you want an extra tag that we had? And I think at the time it probably would have been one of the top 10 in the world. So it was just awesome experience. Yeah, this summer I did they shot actually a Fannin, sort of a Dahl Stone hybrid. So I guess theoretically I got 3 of the 4. So I need a good bighorn, Rocky Mountain bighorn.
Right on. Well, the quest, I know for many on the Grand Slam, is something that people will obviously never forget the rest of their life. And I've had a few friends that have completed it. And so, I wish you the best of success in your pursuit for that. And
the sheep, I love it because it's just so man versus nature. It's, the hunt, the excruciating efforts. I know what I went through this summer. It's just, my guide was an awesome guy, Mark London. He's an incredible guy, tough, in shape. It was great. And he was sort of, again, you never know. I guess, he'd seen enough about me to say, hey, he talks a good game, but can he actually hold his own? So, he took me in some pretty tough spots at first. It was like, okay, that was a test. You're good. Let's go. We just had an amazing hunt through some incredible terrain, and I love it. I mean, I'm still, I'll still chase sheep, even the ones I got. It's not just about getting the slam. I love being out in that setting more than probably anything else right now. And I've got quite a bit of experience in Africa. I got quite a bit of experience all over, all over the Americas. And, that's still probably my favorite right now. If I could just do, one major trip type of hunt a year, it would definitely still be sheep.
And I think the thing that, I guide for a desert bighorn, and I think the thing that people are so intrigued with is, it's a true test. It's a test mentally. It's a test physically. There's a lot of adventure. There's a lot of things that go wrong. And I think you learn a lot about yourself when you go on some of those wild hunts that, it's just completely wild. It's a complete adventure. Sometimes just getting an animal is a huge feat in itself.
Oh, yeah.
Not to mention a trophy animal.
Yep.
One of the questions I was going to ask you is, we talk a lot about on my podcast and other episodes, and we get this question a lot about, trophy hunting as opposed to, hunting for food for your family and to eat and what have you. And I look at both of them as they're kind of the same in that it's just hunting. And I
agree. I hate when they grow. Oh, you're only a trophy hunter. It's like, really? That doesn't talk about the 3 doe I shot this year for meat. And if I can get something that's bigger and is what some may judge as trophy potential, that's great. It's just another bonus. It just means I'm hunting that much harder, trying to figure that out and playing that game. But I don't think I've ever shot anything that hasn't been eaten or been fully utilized. Whatever that may be, whether it's here or abroad or in Africa. I have done plenty of meat hunting as well, but the underlying principle is it's always going to get eaten. I wouldn't be doing it if that wasn't the case. And we eat a lot of venison in my household. I like to prepare it. I literally have places and processing places where I fall in love with the way these guys make a tamale, or these guys make the best sweet sausage or hot sausage. And there's places in Texas that just do a great job with certain. I literally will go down there to shoot a doe to be like, hey, I want, X pounds of jerky and this from, one place. It's, I love the meat, and I think, too many people try to make that distinction between trophy hunting and not. And frankly, for me, some of the best trophies in my mind that I've ever shot are not trophies by any standard of the imagination in terms of, the guys, chasing horn and just, score. It was just because the hunt had that much more effort, or we put that much time into it, or it was, I remember when I lived out west, when it was me and three buddies, both were all young and in great shape. They were two U.S. ski team guys, and, we're living in Colorado, and, the three of us worked as like a tag team pair, elk hunting public land with a bow, and all three of us got our elk, by the end of the season. It took us 28 days, packing everyone's stuff out, getting in there, calling for people to, but it was tens of thousands of vertical feet a day to do it, and the effort, I shot a, crappy raghorn in the end, and you know what? It was one of the greatest trophies of my life because it was so much work and it was such a memorable experience. Again, it wasn't any kind of book, it wasn't anything, it wouldn't even qualify, but it was again about the experience and the work and the camaraderie that you made, on this kind of, brutal, grueling journey.
Yeah, for sure. Let's take a quick break here to hear from our sponsors.
Have you guys heard about PhoneScope? PhoneScope is a privately held company that makes custom-molded, precisely engineered smartphone digiscoping adapters. Photographing wildlife has never been easier. Take digiscoping photos and videos from your smartphone and share them with your friends. PhoneScope stands behind their product with a 100% money-back guarantee. PhoneScope is the future of digiscoping. Get yours now. Use the JScott16 promo code and receive 10% discount on all purchases. Check them out at PhoneScope, that's PhoneSkope.com, or on Instagram at PhoneScope. Wilderness Athlete is committed to improving the health and quality of life for the outdoor athlete by providing field-tested, scientifically validated nutrition and sports performance products. Check them out at wildernessathlete.com and use the JScott promo code to receive 10% off any order in February 2016.
Don, I want to shift a little bit to talk to you about some business stuff and ask you, I'm in the real estate business as well, and I got in 1997 when I graduated from college. And I would ask you, do you like real estate as much as your father does?
It's an interesting question. I like talking about hunting a lot more than I do about real estate. Can we go back to the other stuff? No, listen, I do. I like it a lot. I don't know if anyone likes real estate as much as my father does. I wouldn't do something as voraciously as I do, my work if I didn't enjoy it and appreciate it. But, he is he's a work all the time kind of guy. I mean, he has fun and he does it, but, he's a big golfer, but he plays golf on the courses that he owns so that he can tweak them and constantly improve them and make them better. I'm able to, and I choose to, decompress a little bit more. And so my personal life, what I do in the outdoors is just the antithesis of what my work week is like. And so I'm able to separate the two, very abruptly and very effectively. For him, it's a little different. I mean, he's sort of a constant worker. That's what, but that's his passion, that's his lifestyle, that's his vocation is his passion, is his work, and so it makes it easier to do that. I do love what I do. I do really enjoy, especially real estate and the creative aspects of it. But when I'm in a tree stand, I'm thinking about hunting and being in the woods, not so much work.
So in other words, when you work hard, but then you're able to turn it off and you're able to focus on the strategy and the pinch points and the different trees that you should be in, and then you go all in that, and you're able to kind of shut it on and off.
Yeah, I think it's a fair assessment. I think today with, mobile technology, it's a little harder to get away. I mean, it is difficult for me to, if I know there's incoming coming in and I'm sitting there and I haven't seen anything for a while, I probably preferred it before the advent of the iPhone. Years ago where you'd actually sit in a tree stand, you didn't have the option of even looking. But I probably cheat a little bit and do a little bit of work out of the stand. But no, I do try to really separate the two.
For sure. How do you see technology changing, the actual business relationship today? It just seems as the personal touch is we've lost sight of that a little bit. How do you see technology changing business?
Well, I mean, that's certainly the case. You see it with, people that are just virtually incapable of actually communicating outside of, using multiple emojis to express their emotions. That's a little bit disconcerting because, I think interpersonal relationships, networking, and that ability is so important for business. It's what I love about the outdoors because oftentimes, again, it does force you to sort of remove at least most layers of that communication. It forces you to have a real conversation. So, that's important. But, at the same time, I think, given what I do and what I have to do and, being able to communicate and being able to do it that way is also advantageous to me being able to do what I want to be doing in my free time. So, you sort of have to take the good with the bad. I can do 90% of what I need to do from anywhere in the world with my sat phone if I need to. So, that's kind of convenient and it allows me to do and take, sort of adventures that I wouldn't otherwise perhaps be able to do if I didn't have that direct access because it's hard to be gone for weeks at a time when you're running the kind of business we are. So, I guess you have to take the good with the bad in that one.
Yeah, I think you're right. Before I got on the conversation with you, I was looking through the Trump website and I came across a couple videos that were really good with you and your brother and your sister. And there was some talk about building the brand and maintaining the Trump brand.
Yes.
What kind of advice would you give to people out there that are starting their own businesses? No matter what type of business, how do you build a brand, and what are the key ingredients to being a successful brand?
Well, listen, for brand, it's all about consistency, right? You have to be true to your message. You have to be consistent to that message. So, that's not always easy to do because you have to be on point all the time. I mean, one little mistake in a brand, and all the work you've done for a long time can be over. Now, we've been very lucky in that. We've been able to step in and sort of more be stewards of a brand that my father created and spent 30 years creating. So, our job is a little different than his. We're a little less risk averse, and frankly, he's less risk averse now because he's created what it is that he's created. But there was a time where, you had to take those kind of risks to be able to achieve what he's achieved. We look at it differently. We have to be a lot more cautious, a lot more protectors of the brand rather than going all in sort of on innovating or trying to alter or change or grow. So our job is a lot different than his was when he was our age. But, again, it's still about the brand at all times.
I want to ask you a few questions about politics, and I think I've been watching the campaign here very closely, and why do you think that your dad resonates so much with so many Americans?
Well, honestly, I think because he's not a politician, he's someone who has actually employed people. All these other guys, they talk about job creation. They've never hired anyone in their lives. They've literally never once had someone's well-being, their family's livelihoods, dependent on their success. And my father's been doing that for 40 years. He's had tens of thousands of people dependent on him showing up, being successful, winning. He resonates with people. He's talking with people. He's saying the things that they're thinking. He's not talking at them. I feel like so many of the other people in the field, they're academics. They're talking about theory, but they've never done any of it in practice. I think, he's talking to also, hardworking blue-collar Americans. Those are people who have been forgotten these days. I mean, if you're not some sort of special, demographic of whatever, you're the actual people who built this country. You're the people who made this country great. And those are people that politicians don't even think about, don't even cater to anymore. So he's talking to the people that are hardworking Americans that made the country what it is, and he's giving them a voice again. And I think that's unique. So many politicians, they run through their databases of what they need to tell people so they get their vote. And then all of a sudden, when it comes time, when the rubber meets the road, they do whatever their special interests want. And I think people are sick of it. They're excited about someone giving them a voice. And I think my father's message is just resonating with them very clearly.
Yeah, and I think funding his own campaign and not being subject to, the lobbyists and not being subject to anybody running him like a puppet, I think is another huge thing. Can you speak to that somewhat?
Listen, I think 100%. I mean, he's risking, these other guys, and you see it, and that's what's so disingenuous about all the attack ads that you see now. You have some guy who, contributed $10 million to someone else's campaign so that when the time comes, he'll call in his favor to make sure he secures a contract, even though he doesn't deserve it. My father's funding his own campaign and spending his money wisely because he wants America to know, like, hey, I'm not beholden to anyone. I'm going to do what's right for the people for a change. Now, it's hard to believe we're even having this conversation, but that's what it's become. There's zero thought about the American people, and certainly the hardworking people of this country. It's all about everyone else and catering to this, and God forbid we offend this demographic that makes up 0.0002% of the populace. That's not the way my father speaks. I mean, he speaks from the gut. He speaks from the heart. He doesn't hold back. And because of that, he's actually forcing real conversation to be had. Everyone pretends, oh, we don't have a problem with this. We don't have a problem with it. Well, we do have a problem with it, and we got to talk about it. And just because it may not be nice, and the problems are serious problems, so we have to have the conversation. We can't just bury our head in the sand and pretend that there's not an issue there. And politicians have got away with that so much, but if you look at the major issues that are playing out in this race, they're issues that were taboo to even talk about. But my father sort of said, hey, here's the problem. And, he can be diplomatic. I've seen him do deals all over the world with people from all different cultural backgrounds, all different ethnicities, all different, personalities. He can do that and do deals that are favorable to him on his terms. But he's also the first guy to admit that, hey, and sometimes you have to break out the hammer. Sometimes you have to beat something over someone's head when there's a real problem. You just can't pretend that it is because, we want to look at the world through rose-colored glasses. And so I think people get it, and he's opening their eyes to how the world really functions here.
If your father were to be elected president of the United States, what should sportsmen know about, I guess, if, from a sportsman's perspective, how do you think he will help sportsmen?
Well, listen, he's been, as it relates to sportsmen, obviously, the big joke over the holidays was, the only job in government that I would ever want would be the Department of Interior, because I want to make sure that our public lands stay public, that, I can see some aspects where the state may get a little bit more involved, but they're going to remain public. It's not going to be something where the state can sell it off to fund their shortfalls so they can run up deficits and sportsmen are left out in the dust. It's going to be about making sure that kind of access to the public, to the great lands, and so we can continue the amazing sporting traditions of this country. So my father said the only job I would ever do would be literally the Department of Interior, and I'd make sure to be involved in that. And between my brother and I, we're going to be the voice in his ear, screaming about those kind of issues. So he'll be the best guy for sportsmen since Teddy Roosevelt, because it is such a passion of ours, and he gets it. And frankly, the Second Amendment is a big part of that. A, because of the freedom aspect. B, because access to firearms is and as complicated as they're trying to make it, that's going to be the end of sportsmen when they make it very difficult to purchase firearms. And he's the guy that's taken controversial positions on firearms, in the wake of San Bernardino, in the wake of Paris. He's, when everyone else who's so pro-Second Amendment, they're crickets. Now they've done their one obligatory photo shoot, with their finger on the trigger on a gun with the safety off, so it looks like they know what they're actually doing, but they don't. He's the only guy saying, hey, you know what, if bullets were flying the other way, California and Paris, where you have the toughest gun laws in the world, like the only people that are going to obey those laws are law-abiding citizens. The criminals are still going to do it. If there were bullets flying the other way, maybe you'd have a different end result. So even the other guys that are, quote-unquote pro-Second Amendment, they're not going to say those things. They're crickets when a real controversy comes out. My father's not afraid to have those conversations. So, I think he's going to be incredible for the Second Amendment. I think he's going to be incredible for concealed carry. You can make sure that I'm going to be the loud and obnoxious voice in his ear, making sure that those things get done. And as it relates to sportsmen, we're going to take care of our public lands, make sure that they stay public. In some cases, maybe the state gets involved in terms of management, because certain states, I know certainly Utah and some of the other states, have done a good job. But, any kind of thing where the state's going to be back involved, it's not going to be so they can sell off those lands to fund shortfalls, in their budgets. And, the great public lands that we have and have access to are going to wither away. That's never going to happen under my watch.
Love it. That's I wanted to have you make that very clear, and you obviously made that clear. I want to thank you for being on with us today, and I just want to finish with one last question, and that is, with all the busyness that you have with business, and you've got a big family and 5 kids, and the sporting life that we enjoy and that you enjoy, How do you balance that?
Honestly, you just have to make time for it. Yeah, you have to make time for it. I've gotten to the point in my career, where it's not just about doing the next deal. And there was a time in my life where I said, okay, well, I'm going to cancel that hunting trip, and then you end up sitting there and nothing happens because it looked like you were going to close a deal. So you just have to make the time for it all. And family, self, the outdoors, I sort of group it in there with both of those things. That's really important to me. It allows me to be stable, and if I'm satisfied in that life, I'm more efficient in my work life. And so you just have to make the time. And then I don't think anyone's ever been on their deathbed saying, I wish I made one more deal. I don't think that's ever gone through someone else's mind. So you just have to make the time and do it.
Awesome. That's a great way to answer that question. And I've got turkey season coming up here, April and May. Really looking forward to. We're going to hunt some Merriam's, and nice. I do Gould's turkey hunts down in Mexico. What do you have coming up?
Well, I got Easterns coming up in May 1st, so I'm going to hope to try to get down to with some friends down in Georgia. Their season starts a little bit earlier. May get down to Texas to do it if I can pull away from the campaign trail. That's the real problem right now. Is the campaign's really screwing me up as it relates to those seasons right now. But you know me, I'll always make the effort, and I always, even if it's sort of last minute, I have so many friends that know I'm into it, and they have places, or they're big into it and passionate about it, and they'll call me up and be like, hey, I know it's last minute, but you want to come to a turkey hunt this weekend? I'll get on a plane and make it happen. So, I'm sure I'll have some good turkey stories for you within the next few weeks.
That's great. I saw when you guys were in Iowa, it looked like you and your brother went out. It looked like a pheasant hunt or something while you were there. So you got some hunting in even on the campaign trail. Yeah, listen, that's the great thing about the campaign trail. Obviously in business, being a hunter and stuff can be a little bit more controversial. But now that we're in politics and we're certainly conservative, it's feel like I can come out of the closet. I can talk about it. Yeah, I'm a hunter and I'm proud of it. Unlike so many people that I know in New York City that are big hunters, big and serious hunters, but they can't even talk about it. It's always interesting. There's guys I've known for decades, and until I started becoming vocal about hunting, and they'd be like, "Hey, I didn't know you were a hunter." I was like, "Really? Like, why? What are you?" And find out they're huge hunters, and they do it, but they just don't talk about it because of the some of that stigma that's associated with it, at least where we live here, and so. Again, if I can be a spokesperson for it to talk about sort of the benefits of it, the incredible, relationships that I've made, just, again, being out in the woods and how, natural and organic that is, and, get more people into the woods, that's my job now. I got to try to do it, make sure that lifestyle's around for my kids and their kids behind them. Awesome stuff. I really appreciate you spending time with us today, and I love your dad's slogan of "Let's make America great again," and I truly feel like if he's elected, he can do that. I believe he's the only one that can do that, and I just want to thank you for spending time, and wish you the best on your upcoming turkey seasons and fishing season this summer, and thank you for spending time here. It's my pleasure, Jay. Thank you very much as well, and good luck to you too.
Utah Hydrographics is in the water transfer printing service, and they are open to whatever you can dream up. Choose from a wide range of camo patterns, designs, and colors. Whether it's guns, bows, tools, rifle stocks, vehicles, steering wheels, fenders, dashboards, paint guns, fishing rods, cups, tripods, watches, knife grips, helmets for a local sports team or for your motorcycle, picture frames, mailbox, animal skulls, you name it, they can probably do it. Utah Hydrographics loves taking things that are general looking and turns them into something that looks fantastic and eye-popping. Give them a call and see what they can do for you and receive up to a 10% discount by using the JScott16 promo code. Visit them at utahhydrographics.com or on Instagram at Utah Hydrographics. Whether you are interested in elk, deer, antelope, bighorn sheep, or moose, Western Hunter and Elk Hunter magazines will bring the adventure to your mailbox. These publications feature articles on the finest hunting gear, tips and tactics from experienced hunters, field judging trophies, glassing techniques, calling strategies, and much more. To become a more knowledgeable and skilled hunter, subscribe today. Go to westernhunter.net/jscott and enter your email address for a chance to win a $1,500 credit towards any Swarovski product.